Hello and welcome to the Podawakens. My name is Jordan, and we are continuing our High Republic Road to the Acolyte. And today, joining me for the second time is Brandon. How are you today, Brandon?
Hey, I'm good, man. Thanks for having me back on the show.
Yeah, thanks for coming back on. We did a test of courage,
We did.
and I know you're a big Vernestra fan, so I needed somebody for Out of the Shadows, and I was like, why don't I ask Brandon back on? So
What's the privilege and an honor? I appreciate that.
And if people have been listening throughout this, I've been giving our guests questions when it's their first time on the show. Well, since this is Brandon's second time, he actually prepared questions for me. So this is a fun little surprise. I do not know what these are, but it's going to be like what, some quick fire questions, correct?
Yeah, so I actually had a little bit of fun with this. I was playing around with some AI and ChatGPT and stuff. And so ChatGPT actually came up with these rapid fire
Hmm.
questions. So some of them are base level, but some of them go a little bit deeper and are unexpected. So I think you're gonna have a lot of fun with this. So let's just go ahead and jump into it.
Yeah.
First one, who's your favorite Jedi character introduced in Star Wars: The High Republic, and why?
Oh, favorite one in the High Republic. Um, It's been Bell Zettifar and
Mm,
Stellan Geos, but if I had to pick one, it'd probably be Bell. I feel like he's had to go through a lot in
yeah.
the adult books is where we mostly see Bell Zettifar, and he also has a cool Charhound. I think that's pretty rad. So yeah, I go with Bell as my overall favorite, but runner up Stellan Geos.
Those are solid picks. You can't go wrong with somebody who has a dog. That's just
Yes, it
my
is true.
opinion on things. So, and I feel like Belle is kind of like a point of view character for the audience a lot of
Yep.
times, which is really really cool. So, all right. So on the flip side of that, which of the Nile leaders do you find most intriguing, and how do you think they'll impact the galaxy?
Ooh. Um, I think I like Markion the most.
Yeah.
Um, I think he is just very interesting. I've only really read Phase One, so I know maybe there's more stuff in about him in Phase Three. But um, so far, just kind of getting to know his like what he is all about, right? Like we still don't
Hmm.
really know. It's just like he's this guy who does make an appearance in this book as well, but he is this guy who takes over from being the eye, which before was just creating the paths, and have now taken over the Nile and is instilling himself as the leader.
Yeah.
And I think just kind of his planning, his machinations he goes through, he's very interesting. Plus, I love the voice that they give to him in the audiobooks. So I would say Markion Rowe. Now, galaxy wise, that's a good question because I don't really know what to expect from him. We know obviously he can't ultimately succeed. It seems like he doesn't like the Jedi. We know the Jedi are still around
Yeah.
by the time we get to episode one. But I think he will kind of create some lasting damage, and I think he's created enough damage already that has kind of started pushing the Jedi off of course, where the Jedi have now started to be a little too buddy buddy with the Republic, and have kind of started losing their way of being arbiters of peace.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
He's forcing them into a position where they have to decide what they're willing to sacrifice, and I think that they were willing to sacrifice more than they probably should have been
Yes.
in playing with the dark side. So all right, so maybe that leads into the number three, which is what aspect of the High Republic era's storytelling do you find the most refreshing compared to the other Star Wars timelines?
So I think I've mentioned this a few times, but I really just enjoy seeing new eras,
Yeah.
seeing new timelines. You know, on the timeline, we have only really seen from episode one to episode nine. And that was all that they've been doing since Disney took over, was kind of populating those eras. You know, um, any sort of book, movie, or video game, it seemed from the time Disney took over was either between 3 and 4 or between 6 and 7. Really, it is like all they were doing at the time. And I want it, especially after Rise of Skywalker, I just want to get out of that time frame. You wrapped up the Skywalker saga. Let's let's move on. Either
Right.
in the future or in the past, let's see some new things, new characters that can get you and new villains. I did want them to kind of tap into
Yeah.
non-Sith, and I've liked that the High Republic has done that because there's more stories to be told. There could be a movie, a Star Wars movie that does not focus on Jedi versus Sith, and I think that would be very refreshing. But we never really get that. So we're getting it at least with these books.
Yeah, and I've said over on Clashing Sabers that like I feel like High Republic is the testing ground for them to see how far can we branch out. Can we go with completely unknown characters if we have the same kind of foundation? And I don't think we get the James Mangold movie or the Dave
Yeah,
Filoni movie, or kind of this new approach it seems like they're taking about the timelines if we don't have the High Republic and if it's not successful. I think we would have become much even more sheltered into what we already have gotten. But I think we're able to get these new things because of that. So, all right. So this is a little bit of it's an easier question, but for me it would be hard because I'm not a starship guy. But which starship introduced in the High Republic would you want to pilot? Like, which one
ooh,
would you want to be yours?
yeah. I'm not huge on recall. I would say it would either be the Vessel or the Ataraxia, just because
Okay.
those are like the two I know. But the fact that the Vessel, if I could be teaming up with like Geode and Leox piloting that, I
Yes.
think that would be pretty. I'd be pretty set.
It'd be a little smoky in there, I have a feeling.
Yeah.
All right. So, do you think the Jedi's philosophy in the High Republic era differs significantly from its portrayal in other aspects of Star Wars media? You kind of already touched on this a tad, but
Yeah,
expound on that.
I think that they are actually pretty similar. I was expecting it to be a little different, and I think they start off a little different, right?
Yeah.
One of their philosophies is more of having all of these different temples spread around that Jedi can be assigned to. From what we know, I guess in the prequels, is that they're all on Coruscant. We don't really get
Yeah.
many others mentioned to be on other temples, so that's kind of a big difference, and I think that's partly because of what happens in the High Republic. If
Hmm.
we were going to retcon stuff of, oh well, like I said, they're kind of becoming a little bit more involved in politics at this time. In Into the Dark, we talked about it on there, but in Into the Dark, Reith wants to stay on Coruscant because he likes being not in the field. He likes studying and all that kind of stuff. Well, he ends up having to go out to a journey, and they kind of do this to all Jedi. It seems like to kind of get them out of their comfort zone.
Right.
But he gets sent to the frontier, and their whole messaging is like tell everyone how great the Republic is and how great the Jedi are. Is kind of what they're doing, and he gets in trouble by telling that stuff to Nan, right? Because he doesn't realize she's Nile. But he starts giving a little too much information to Nan about the Republic and about the Jedi. And Nan's questions are kind of like, hey, she kind of phrases it like, why are you guys out here? Like, aren't you only like for the Republic, right? And aren't you part of the Republic? Stuff like that. And he says, no, we actually help everyone. But because that they've kind of started becoming a little too joined to the hip with the Republic, with Starlight Beacon and getting out to the
Mm.
frontier and trying to convert these places to Republic spaces, it starts tainting their perception to outside people that they are squarely for the Republic. And by the time we get to the prequels, that's pretty much what they are, right? They're fighting a
Oh yeah.
war with the Confederates of the Separatists on behalf of the Republic, and they are generals in a Republic army, which they would never ever would have been around this time. So I think what I would say is that they kind of start off different in here, but when you have events like uh, the Valo disaster,
Yeah.
when you start having the Starlight disaster, and also just, hey, get everybody out here and get everybody talking how great the Republic is, it starts pushing them further and further down that line that we come to in Phantom Menace, where literally in Phantom Menace, Chancellor Valorum is like, "Hey, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, go talk to the Trade Federation to stop this dispute." Right? Like
Yeah.
they're doing political stuff for the Republic.
Well, and even down to the last moment, Obi-Wan clings to the Jedi's attachment to the Republic. He says, I am loyal to the Republic, to democracy.
Yes.
And it's the Republic that comes first. It's not democracy and the Republic, it's the Republic that comes first. And so that's really an interesting thing. And going back to what you were saying about the temples too, we're seeing the influence of the High Republic going into other media already. I'm like 40 pages in, but the Living Force, kind of one of the
Mm.
starting things that gets that book going, is that the Jedi are going around and closing down temples that are basically not in use anymore, or
Okay, great. Like I haven't started it yet, but knowing that
yeah.
that is kind of like a continuation of that for sure, that it's not like they just didn't allude to it in the prequels, but that they actually did close them down. I think
Yeah,
is cool.
and then if you go to things like Rebels, where we see Kanan and Ezra visiting those temples, it starts to go, okay, like this is making more and more sense. So I like how they're piecing all of that together. So all right, so next one. What's been the most unexpected plot twist or revelation in the High Republic series for you so far? And you said you've only read phase 1, so
Yes, I've started phase 2, but then I had to go back and read some of these that I had missed before. Um, let's see. The biggest twist or reveal,
yeah,
right?
there's one in phase 2 that I'm just like, I really wish you had gotten to it, cuz
Yeah, I would say phase 1 doesn't have many, but what I would say my biggest twist, maybe not really a twist, but the fact that when Loden goes missing and he gets captured and they all think he's dead, and then we kind of learn that Loden was alive and being tested on, that's revealed in the same book. But then I was thinking, for sure, he's going to get out of this. He's going to get out of it because they kept him alive, and Bell feels him, and Bell knows he's alive. And then, like I said, Bell has to experience a lot here in Rising Storm.
yeah.
Bell loses Loden for good. So I would say that probably is what shocked me um, the most at the time. Fallen Star probably has some stuff too, but I'm gonna
Yeah.
leave that untouched because that's gonna probably be our final episode before the Acolyte launches.
Well, and I mean, yeah, when they brought Loden back, and you're like, okay, cool, things are gonna be okay. Like he's got inside knowledge of the Nile and all of these things, and then it's like, nope, he's dead. That was kind of the moment where you're really like, literally, no one is safe. And then you get to Fallen Star, and it turns out that literally no one is safe. And I will just say that for anybody who hasn't is waiting for your episode to finish the book or anything like that, because
Hmm.
that book that book hits hard, and there are some twists that definitely would qualify for this category. So, all right, which planet or location introduced in the High Republic would you most like to visit?
Good question. Location I'd like to visit in the High Republic. Um, I feel like they've really explored pretty well the Iram Aranos stuff.
Hmm.
So that's the one that immediately jumped out to my mind because it's been so prevalent in all of the media. But I'm actually going to say Starlight Beacon before before break.
Before the fall, yeah. Obviously, you got to time it right.
It's like, it's like the Titanic. You're like, I gotta make
Yeah,
sure I go and get out of there.
yeah. Uh, I think Starlight Beacon would definitely be a good one. Dalna is pretty interesting to me, which you get more of in phase 2. Uh, I just like the design of that planet. I think it would be really interesting to go explore. So, all right, among the diverse cast of characters in the High Republic, who do you think faces the greatest internal conflict?
Ooh,
Yeah,
internal conflict.
it's
I think,
interesting because you've got so much external conflict going on that it's
yeah,
kind of
I would think the most internal conflict that jumps out to me right away would probably be Elzar.
mm,
I think
yeah,
he's got a lot going on, struggling with his perception of stuff. But really, like Stellan kind of goes through the same thing,
yeah,
just quieter, right? Like Stellan goes through it in Fallen Star a bit. Um, Another one I would say is Skier, right? Skier goes
yeah.
through quite a bit in the comics, but I'm going to stick with Elzar. I think Elzar probably has the most internally that he's dealing with.
Yeah, I think him and his starts to bleed over to other characters,
Yeah.
which is really interesting. We're even, I think we're going in that direction in phase 3 between him and Avar.
Mhm.
That there, I don't say this necessarily romantically because I don't want to give any spoilers one way or the other about what they're doing, but their relationship to one another, I think their bond is probably a better term, is really strong. So I think the internal conflict that he's going through bleeds over to Stellan and Avar in some really interesting ways. So, all right, now this is a big one, I think. How do you feel about the portrayal of the Force in the High Republic?
Yeah, that's interesting because sometimes I can get a little iffy on new force powers.
Hmm.
Um, I'll say I'm not crazy about Avar's power.
Oh, I was just thinking about how I'm like Avar's is the perfect power for what I believe about the Force.
I mean, like I don't know. Maybe it's just the terminology she's always using about like hearing their song or something. But I'm like if somebody was preaching that to me the whole time, I'd be like, all right, tone it down a little
Yeah,
bit.
they've got like a white shirt and a black tie on. And you're
Yeah,
just
yeah. They're knocking on your
um,
front door. You're like,
right.
okay, yes, I understand the songs of the Force. Um, but so that took a little bit of adjusting to and trying to figure out like what her power or actually kind of was with that. Um, but I don't really know any other ways that they're portrayed other than Ava. I mean, there are some different. Oh, Vernestra has like the Force
Yeah,
vision thing.
the
I
hyperspace
actually like that.
vision.
I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I just like the way they're portraying the Force overall. I'm a very like anti this argument of like who's the most powerful Force user.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that doesn't matter. That's not what the Force is about. It's not a, like Luke literally says it's not a power you have. Um,
Ray
and so
Skywalker, by the way, is the answer to
yeah, yes.
that.
But it it it's not about the power. Like Luke is not the greatest force user of all
Right,
time because of his powers. It's because of his empathy. It's because of the way he uses it. And so I like that while they have these abilities and Avar can unite the Jedi's minds together, that it's not about it being a power. Like I don't think they ever even reference it as a power or some kind of power level. That's a
right.
video game thing that kind of became toxic for kind of the overall discussion that we're able to have. And I'm not anti video games, but just like it when those were big, Force Unleashed and stuff, it changed the conversation. So
Oh yeah, he was way overpowered.
yeah,
Starkiller is like
yeah.
pulling a whole the Star Destroyer out of the atmosphere.
Yeah, it's craziness, but that really I think was like a major shift in the way we have this conversation, and I love that they have really rooted it back into like it's about the connection with the Force, not about being able to, like you said, pull a Star Destroyer out of the sky. So, all right, final question: if you could see one crossover event between the characters from the High Republic and characters from other Star Wars eras, who would you pair up? And what adventure would you send them on?
Oh geez, that's a good question. Um, how about This is interesting. What I would do. So I'm going to use technology that already exists in Star Wars,
Okay.
and it shows up in Jedi Survivor, and the whole reason why there's High Republic connections in there. We have a character, a Jedi from the High Republic in there, turn evil, and Cal has to face him.
Yep.
So I'm gonna do the same exact thing. I'm gonna put like them on ice,
Okay.
right? And I'm gonna take Bell and Ember, Burryaga, and Stellan, and we're gonna send them into the future, and they're gonna get thawed out after Rise of Skywalker,
Ooh,
and they're
okay.
gonna help Rey setting up the new Jedi, uh, the new Jedi temple, and they're gonna use some of their High Republic knowledge before they. She'll use them because they weren't as instrumental in the fall of the Republic.
I like it.
So then she has a different perspective of Jedi that she can kind of lean on, and they will face off against a new enemy that's not Sith or Nihil. They're just going to be um, some new threat that is maybe not Force related, just something almost like pirates, like the Nihil, but
Yeah.
not as like, I think more swashbuckling pirates than like raider pirates
Yeah.
that the Nihil are. That's what I would set up here.
Dude, it's like you just ruined the Ray movie for everybody. You're like, here's the. Meanwhile, like you go this deep, rebuilding the Jedi Order, and I'm like, Buryaga and Chewbacca going on a buddy cop adventure.
And that'd be fun too. Like Burry
Yeah.
talking with Chewbacca. We
Right?
find
And
out
like,
we find out Burryaga is like Chewbacca's great grandfather or something.
oh man, and
Actually,
then
it doesn't have to be because Chewbacca's like 200
yeah.
or 300 years old.
So
Chewie knows Burryaga. He's like, oh my
Chewie,
god.
in fact, knows they were in the same clan as
Yes.
younglings. Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah. Now, so again, these questions brought to you by your friendly neighborhood Chat GPT. But I thought it would be a little bit fun to see what kind of random things it would spit out, about the High
Yeah.
Republic.
Surprised
And
it came up with some good ones because like my wife has sometimes used that for she does like she'll create trivia questions for like this Facebook group that she does sometimes.
yeah.
And she'll have it also present the answer, and I have to always double check them, especially Star Wars ones, because they'll be wrong. And
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like, yeah, like I think I forget what one of the things was is like what's Rey's lightsaber color? And I'm like, that's like there's two different answers to that. Like,
Yeah.
what are they looking for? Like, and it would be like blue, and I'm like, no, actually it's yellow at the end of Rise of Skywalker. So I always had to overlook those questions to make sure that they were correct, or if they were referring to something from like Legends and not
Canon.
and all that. Yeah.
You just got to push your nerd glasses up a
Yes.
little bit and be like, well, actually.
I'd be marking them off like a test. I'm like, this is wrong. This is wrong.
You ever like see like a Star Wars trivia game? You're like, oh, I should buy this, and then you look at some of the cards and you're like, this is so easy. It's not even fun. It's like, who's Han Solo's co-pilot?
Right.
R2D2.
Yeah. I really want to do Star Wars trivia night one time because like I've done Marvel trivia night, got like third place in that. But Star Wars can be difficult though, because like I said, there's so much to pull from.
Yeah. If it includes Legends, I'm out.
Yeah.
My Legends knowledge is next to nothing. As I'm surrounded by like 80 Legends books right now that you can't see on the screen that I'm hoping to eventually read one day. But we keep coming out with more current Star Wars books. We've got the High Republic, we've got the Living Force, we've got all of these things, and then going back and rereading things like Out of the Shadows. So it's it's a hard life. It's a hard rowy. So.
And that's what we're talking about today. Out of the Shadows. This is one of the ones that I listened to on my way back from vacation. I actually listened to it right after A Test of Courage. So for me, I got like a double dose of Vernestra. So kind of like we've been doing, our characters, that take precedence in the story is Vernestra, we have Imri, we have Wreath, we have Comac, a little bit of Avar, a little bit of Stellan, um, and we have Silvestri,
Yep.
Hollow. No, sorry, that's
Yarrow.
Appiello. Yarrow, right? They did that on purpose, I swear.
Definitely. They were coming for you.
That they put it right next, like they put the same type of name there. Um, and then yeah, Chansey Yarrow.
And the enigma that is Xylan Graph.
Yes,
Yeah.
we get Graph. Yeah, so we get quite a few interesting characters in this book. I would say though, just kind of if we're gonna talk about my general, let's kind of just start general thoughts on the
Yeah.
book. My first thoughts when I were listening to this is as I'm driving, I can see on my screen it says how much longer is in the book,
Mm-hmm.
and I was shocked that like halfway through this book, it didn't feel like halfway through this book. Like it takes a bit for this story to get going in the sense
Yeah.
of like it was interesting enough for me to keep listening to, but there was like it was there was like no inciting incident like very early on.
Yeah.
It's a lot of build up.
It's a lot of build up, a lot of relationships,
Yeah.
and then getting all like this. To me, this is a conspiracy theory book. You know, it's
Mhm.
like it's people moving all the chess pieces around to get them
Yeah.
in the right place and things like that. Like you would, like a conspiracy theorist is, always moving things around to try to get it to fit their narrative. I feel like that's what they did with this book. Is like we need X things to happen, and we're gonna keep shifting things until these get in the right position. And that's not necessarily like a bad thing because I think it works. I think it's a good book, but it does it's I wouldn't say a slog, but it's definitely a slow start.
Well, because like, and the part where I kind of realized it is where it seemed like the story was getting ready to really kick off was when they're in the chancellor's uh office,
Yeah.
right? And she has Vernestra and Imri kind of hiding, and then Graf is there, right? And then it's like at that point it's like almost halfway through the book, and I'm like, wow, like okay, this is where it'll actually get started. But then like they kind of skip to a them on the ship, and then they're trying to do like a different route, right? But this is all set up to get them onto a ship where Chansey Yarrow is going to
Hmm.
kind of raid them as part of the Nihil. And this was a very interesting thing too with Silvestri. She thinks her mom has died, right? And we get in this story, she's told the truth by a Gungan doctor, by the way.
Theoretical physicist. Yeah. Imagine
Yeah,
that.
yeah, which was crazy. I was kind of hoping he'd be doing the misas and all that, but they didn't have that written in there like that. He speaks basic, I guess.
Yeah.
No accent. And then he's gonna die too, right? He gets shot.
If
But
they come up in the High Republic, you just got to be
yeah,
prepared for them to die.
be prepared. But so they're supposed to be the ones that tell her, like Graf, right? Is supposed to be the one that Xylan Graf is supposed to tell her that her mom was actually alive and working at the Nihil. She refutes this. Like she's like, no, that can't actually be true. And Chanciaro does attack as part of the Nihil. Um, and she's kind of very like blasé about it, I guess. Like she sees her daughter there and she's like, yeah,
Yeah.
like obviously I'm alive. I told them to tell you. They were supposed to tell you. Did they not tell you? And it's like, what was her plan?
Yeah, I don't know. Um I think maybe that's part of the point is that she doesn't care. And
Yeah, like she's not a great mother.
no, she's not a great mother in any way. And you so I'm gonna have to be very careful in our conversation because turns out Out of the Shadows is the first book, and Defy the Storm, which is in phase 3, is essentially the sequel to Out of the Shadows.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, unexpectedly. So I'm really grateful that I reread this book, because I had no idea going into Defy the Storm that it was going to basically be all of these characters and what happens next with them a year or so later. So for those of you who are listening, keep that in mind as you move through the stories. But um, there the relationship there just was never really healthy. And so Silvestri, I think, wants answers, but I think she's also come to a point where she is okay with the fact that her mom is dead, and finding out that she's alive doesn't really change that she's dead to her, if that makes sense. Um,
Right, right.
because she's not going to be this. It's not like she's been trapped like, Loden was for Belle, and they're going to rekindle a relationship. It's like the only thing that could be worse than her mom being dead is her mom being alive and lying about being dead. And so it's like, what are you supposed to do with that information? I think Silvestri has worked on herself in a way, and learned to cope is probably a better way to put it, to the point where she can look at her mom and be like, I can't believe you're alive, but also this makes total sense for the person that you were.
Yeah. This like I said, I did enjoy this book, but there was just a lot that I was kind of questioning. So I'm happy that there seems to be some sort of sequel
Yeah.
in phase 3 to this, because it seems like by the end of this, the graphs kind of get off pretty light. Uh, with what they've done. Um,
People with money tend to be
yeah,
able to do that.
not as fun in fiction though. When you're
Yeah. Yeah.
also not fun in real life, but I mean, like in
Yeah.
fiction, you're like, yeah, the writer really, yeah,
Do we have to?
yeah. Um, we can control that
Yeah,
in
right?
fiction. Um, but yeah, I and then we kind of start off with the Vernestra storyline. Vernestra and Imri are training, and this is another force power that I guess we didn't really talk about. But Imri is starting to have like really being able like empathetic,
Yeah.
right? Can really sense everybody's emotions to the sense where he is, and we kind of got it in a test of courage when we talked about it last time, where he was feeling the anger from what was his name?
Honesty.
Honesty, yes, and about his father's passing. This it's starting to get to a point where it's almost unbearable for him to be around
Yeah.
people, um, which seems terrible. I don't know how I would ever cope like that. It is something we've seen in like other superhero stories and stuff, right? Like where you can sense emotions, or maybe reading people's minds and it becomes overbearing for the person. What was kind of your thoughts when they kind of go this way with Imri after he had just went through so much in Test of Courage and kind of dangling with the dark side to a
Yeah.
point where he's almost not able to kind of be around certain people, and kind of his struggle with that ability.
Well, honestly, I thought it was the most Jedi thing ever. Um, it To me, it was the Force saying like, I was gonna say you are the chosen one, but that is a very loaded term when it comes to Star Wars.
Yeah,
But
he's not.
yeah, no. It was the Force selecting him for a very important purpose. Um, and we have to go through those kinds of struggles in order to realize that purpose. And so I really liked it, because I think, like, Luke's greatest strength, in my opinion, is empathy and his willingness to sacrifice for people, especially people that he loves, but really for anybody. And so we kind of see that with Imri, and we see even in that moment where he passes on joy to Wreath when Wreath is really struggling. Um, we see that it's all in it's like good natured. He's not trying to do it to prove anything. He's not trying to do it because he can. He's doing it because he has a genuine feeling that this person needs that. And at the same time, I think Vernestra is the perfect master for him having this ability, because she is very cautious about how they handle it. But she's also not egotistical enough to go like, well, this is the way that you should do it. She's able to look him in the eyes and say, I don't know what to do. Let me go talk to somebody who knows more than I do. And speaking as an educator, like that's the best way to be a teacher is don't lie to your students who come to you with a problem or an ability that you don't quite understand. Go find somebody who can help you figure that out. And even though they don't figure that out here, this book gives you the optimism that that team together is capable of doing that. So I loved the power. It's obviously hard to see somebody suffer for an ability that really is inherently good. But it really does grow Emery into being a really special character.
Yeah, I was happy to get more Emery because I felt like we didn't get enough of him in A Test of Courage, like because that book is so much shorter. Like
Yeah.
you get a little bit of these characters, you don't get as much as you do in this one. Um, but yeah, so this is like the first book where we see Vernestra and Emery being that partnership, master apprentice style, with her being only like a year or two older than him.
Yeah, they're very close.
Yeah, and there's times where I think she kind of mentions like how she's adjusting right to being a master. Um, and it was funny. I was reading the comics because I was preparing to record the comic episode, and uh, I didn't realize it at the time, but Imri and Vernestra are in the comic at a certain point, and I was seeing them, and it took place after A Test of Courage, probably around this time or after this. I don't remember. They were on the Beacon though, so whenever that would have been, I guess before this, that they were dealing with that stuff. But
Yeah. Because they're
um,
on the beacon at the beginning of this story, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, and they had been on there for about a year or so. That I think they said. This takes place a year after Into the Dark, I believe.
Okay.
Somewhere
Yeah.
around there. Like we're starting to get into Rising Storm time frame, which is a year after Light of the Jedi, and we're starting to move a little further and further down the path here. So I believe if it wasn't a year, they've been on the station for a bit doing other missions for Avar. And she starts off kind of worried about having to tell Stellan about her lightsaber that she made into a whip,
Hmm.
which we knew from A Test of Courage. But in this, she wants to tell Stellan, and Avar knows, but she hasn't told Stellan, and she's worried kind of about Stellan judging her on this or not being happy with this. Do you think that's a valid concern? I know Stellan's a little by the book, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's pretty cool. So I don't know why anybody would have a problem with it.
I think it goes back to hmm, now I'm trying to remember which book it's in. It's not a major spoiler, so I'm just going to go ahead and say it. At some point in either this book or Test of Courage, or possibly, but I don't think Defy the Storm, they mention how the light whip was like used by the Night Sisters.
Test
Um,
of Courage, I think, does mention it.
was it
Yeah,
okay?
because she
Okay,
mentions that she was worried about telling Imri about it because she, especially when he was dealing with the dark side stuff, she didn't
right.
want him to think that she was dealing with that stuff or
Okay, I
whatever.
was hoping it was in
You're
there
right.
and I wasn't spoiling anything, but so I think that creates a valid concern for a Jedi, and I mean Jedi as in the Order, who are at peace. And when you're at peace like that, a lot of times you go looking for things that are wrong. And Stellan is that kind of guy who's going to look for things that are wrong. You've also got somebody in Vernestra who is in a very unique position, which makes her very vulnerable because she is such a young Jedi Knight, and it's easy for people to question her. And we see even she questions herself and whether she's worthy of such an honor. So I think it makes sense. I think it's a good idea for her to talk to Avar before she talks to Stellan. Um, Stellan at this point in the timeline is a very judgmental kind of Jedi, where if things are not like you said, like by the book, then it's not okay. He reminds me of who I think Obi-Wan would have become if Obi-Wan didn't have Qui-Gon as a master, where it's like everything would have been the dogma. And the reason that Obi-Wan was able to have more grace with Anakin, even though in the end it ultimately failed, I still don't think it failed because of Obi-Wan, because Obi-Wan was able to know when to look away from things for Anakin and give him some grace. And I don't think Stellan learns how to do that until the Fallen Star. And so here at this point in the timeline, it would make sense that she would expect him to not handle bringing this weapon from the dark ages of history into the Jedi Order, even though she was called by the Force.
Right, right. So yes, I was able to verify. This is after the attack on Valos, so this
Okay.
is a year after. Because Reith mentions that Comac has been going on more dangerous missions with him since the attack on Valos. So
Okay.
yeah, so we are past Rising Storm here, which confirms the order that I have to release this in. I've been recording all these out of order, so I am all over the place right now. Oh yeah, so all right, so we have a Jedi named Nubaran, right, who refuses to let Imri and Vernestra borrow or
Oh yeah.
a ship because of
Yeah.
her record in crashing them. So Comac and Reith are going towards Coruscant as well, so they decide that they will hitch a ride together. But while they're on the way here, we have a detour to a planet called TK, which I'm now seeing spelled out for the first time because I listened to the audiobook.
And that's the first time I'm hearing it called TK. I always thought it was
Yes.
Takai. So,
Yeah.
Star Wars in words.
Right. And you're probably it's no K-A-E. Yeah, that'd probably be K. It could still be like Tai K.
It's the Markion Marchion
Yeah, yeah.
debate. Like,
But yeah, in the audiobook they said TK. And I was
okay.
just picturing letters T and K.
Yeah.
Is what I was picturing. I was like, what are we going to like a
Like a
planet that
Terminator.
doesn't have a name, and they're like,
Yeah.
this is N531 outside of Mars or something. So while they're there, that's when Vernestra is getting one of her hyperspace visions again that we've mentioned in the previous episode with Vernestra, and she experiences it here again. But this time it's Nihil attacking an Ugnaught family. And I may have mentioned this in that episode or another episode, but she decides that they have to go to TK, and when she gets there, at that point, it is too late. The Ugnaught family is killed after being tortured as well. But they do help the people that are currently there. There's a Jedi Marshal, Master Operand Quinn, I believe was his name. Yeah, Quinn,
Hmm.
um, who is kind of the leader of a outpost that they have there. And we run into a character that we had heard mentioned earlier in the book from Silvestri's perspective, but it's Jordana Sparkburn, who is part of the Santeca clan. If you've been following along with us here, Santecas were mentioned in Light of the Jedi. They've probably been mentioned in almost every book, but of course, Lore Santeca is Max Van Sydow's character in The Force Awakens at the beginning of that. So this is his ancient family. But what did we make of Jordana, who was the ex-girlfriend of Silvestri? I forget if they said how long they were together, but she is part of the Santecas clan working on TK at this time.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like it was a whirlwind summer romance kind of
Yeah.
thing that maybe um, had the potential for something more serious. And so I didn't feel like we got a lot of Jordana in this one.
No.
Um, she definitely has more character development in Defy the Storm.
Good.
which was nice because the stuff that we did get of her in this book, I enjoyed. Um, she kind of has that like biker vibe to her, where she's just out there doing her thing, and you know, I like her sense of integrity, her sense of dedication to this was my assignment and I'm going to stick with it. That was something really relatable, and her, you know, having to learn when is the time when it's okay to let go is something really powerful. So I enjoyed what we got of her in the story, and I appreciated that it was a character that they continued to build on.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you that they probably didn't give us enough in this one, where she felt a little bit more like a tertiary character. At times, just kind of being a goal for Silvestri, right?
Hmm.
I gotta talk to Jordana again. I kind of want to restart that relationship. But they love giving these people animals, huh? Because she's got like a cool cat type
Dude,
thing.
yeah. Just all the pets, man. I love it. I love it.
Yes, the High Republic definitely made by pet lovers for pet lovers. But they get like this puzzle box from the Nile. That was from what the Ugnaughts had that Vernestra has, and she kind of keeps it secret as she's trying to solve it herself. Now, I want to also ask. We mentioned about the professor before, the Gungan. His name is Thaddeus Wolk, by the way. Where did the Gungans go wrong? How do you go from Thaddeus Wolk to names like Jar Jar Binks?
I mean, I guess they kind of devolved like the Jedi did.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. I mean, it's
what?
kind of crazy. Like we're producing a world class talent, and then it's like, well,
I mean, every culture has them.
yeah, yeah.
You
But I mean,
know,
like even just the name Thaddeus
yeah.
Wolk, it sounds like a 18th century professor, German professor or something. Uh, but yeah, he is the one that's going to die later on, and he has the
When
theory about Chancey Yarrow's fake
Yeah, I was
death.
just about to say he's kind of a plot device character,
Yeah.
in a good way, like that. Those characters are necessary,
Hmm.
but he provides that exposition about who Chancey Yarrow really was, um, and her history with hyperspace technology. Because really, like that's the crux of what moves the story forward is, you know, the gravity's heart and it pulling ships out of hyperspace, and which of course, you know, we'll later see
Yeah.
used by the Empire in Rebels. But that technology kind of starts here and now with the Nile.
And he is the one that also taught Chancey Yarrow. So
Yeah,
he has a
yeah, that's
relationship
true.
with her. He was a professor, his student at the Academy of uh, Caridia or Carida.
Again, Star Wars words.
Hyperspace theory and philosophy department is what he had taught. And like you said, she had proposed a theory about using gravity wells to pull ships out of hyperspace at will, and they dismissed her as insane.
Yeah,
You're crazy because it challenged the status quo. So she pretended to change her research topic in order to continue researching gravity wells, and then she was expelled. Um, and then that's when you get there's things that they're noticing that makes Thaddeus Woke think she's behind this, and it's because it is like the same exact research he saw her doing. So he's really catching on. But like we said earlier, Sylvester is like, nope, she's dead.
yeah.
She wouldn't give up on me and the crew. Like she's gone. Um, and then we get to Coruscant, and again, so this is like there's stuff happening. I don't want to say there's like nothing happening. There's stuff happening, but then you're thinking, oh, we have a lot of mysteries to solve in this book. We don't
Hmm.
get all of those solved in this. Like I said, it takes a little bit to kind of get going, but I thought it was interesting. Um, we get an appearance by Yaddle,
Oh
uh,
yeah, we do.
who tells her not to reject her instincts while she's pointing her way to Stellan's office. And Stellan's in an office where like his former master or somebody else had uh, currently had been in before, and he's kind of made it his home. He won't be there for long though, because not long after this stuff, he goes to Starlight Beacon
Yeah.
and becomes the active marshal there. While Avar is off doing her thing. Um, but yeah, so like I said before, the Chancellor, by the way, is insane. All right, this not the Chancellor, Senator Giara Staros.
I was about to say the Chancellor also has pets.
Yes, he does. He's got like two big lion things. No, this is Gira Staros, who we know her daughter Avon, right? Who was in A Test of Courage. And that's how she has this relationship with Vernestra. But just the fact that, like, when you think of the logistics behind it, and I think Silvestri or Xylan, somebody brings this up, by the way, that they just stuff Vernestra and Imri in this closet, pretty much, and then welcome Xylan Graf in. She has this full-blown conversation with them before she's like, finally, like, presses a button, and they pop out from the closet.
Yeah.
And it's like, one of them mentions it to him, like, you do know, like, she's like totally just put you in there to like one up me, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, it wasn't coming from a good place, you know. And I just thought it was funny because that's what I'm kind of thinking. I'm like, she just had these people in her closet, like,
yeah, just
go
chilling
in there and wait. I'll tell you when to come out.
When I give you the signal, what's the signal? You'll know.
Yeah, you'll know. It's when the door opens.
Yeah. Like, I guess this is the signal.
And by the way, Jira is from Hosnian Prime, which is, of course, blown up in Force Awakens.
Future capital of the Republic for a hot second.
Yes. But yeah, so she pretty much says, so Xylan's whole plan here is there's an area over here that we want, because they're hyperspace miners, whatever that means. If I'm not going to explain it to people, but they're hyperspace miners, and they want this area, this territory that belonged to the Santecos before, and they're thinking Nihil are in that area. So Jira Staros decides she doesn't trust that. She is going to send a Jedi that she does trust, which is Vernestra, to go with him. If it all plays out well, then yes, they'll get granted the rights to that area. If not, then, you know, obviously they won't. Now, okay, hold on. I have a question for you, and I can cut this if it goes into much spoilers. What is Staros' deal? Because didn't she turn out to be the one that was like in love with Ro Marchion?
Yeah.
In Fallen Star?
In Fallen Star, yeah. So she's Nihil all the way.
Yeah, so why is she putting up a roadblock with Xylan, who was kind of they were teaming up with the Nihil?
Yeah, but Xylan kind of was on the outside of how much the Grafs were teaming up with the Nihil, I think.
Yeah,
I think he kind of goes along with it because the rest of the family is
but
doing
he was in it for more himself, right?
Yeah, he's definitely in it for himself. And I won't elaborate any more than to say that Defy the Storm develops that relationship awesome. A little bit more. Okay. So
that's all I need to know. And I'll leave that in, actually, because I already recorded my Fallen Star and we did not touch on that at all. So if you're listening to this before we get to Fallen Star, that's not a huge spoiler.
No,
I guess
not
it was
really.
Like, in the adult books, you don't even know who Jira Staros really is that much. So.
Well, and it's very clear even here. I mean, the Jedi in the closet trick, it's in and of itself shows that she's kind of the person that always has an ulterior motive.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we even kind of got when she is kind of alluded to in Test of Courage, we got that idea that she's always thinking about the next thing that can get her status and power, because she goes and
Right.
sends Avon off, uses her knowledge as a science, whiz of a kid to go, oh, I'm going to send you off to a boarding school, essentially.
Yeah, so what I'll say, reading these out of order has been whack because I read Fallen Star, then I went back and read, all these. So I get to Test of Courage and they introduce Avon, and I see the last name Starro, so I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. Then I am waiting the whole time for Avon to be like the bad guy secretly.
Hmm.
Because I'm like, she's related to the Starros. And then of course none of that happened. But then in this one, I'm like, well, why is she blocking it? So I was like thinking maybe we're gonna get more of her before the Fallen Star stuff, but I don't think we get much of that. So
I just
just
think
wanted to
she's
clear that
kind
up.
of like, while she ends up full on Nile and she's all in on them, I think
She's
she
like in
start
love with Markion, right?
yeah,
Like she has that
in
weird
a
like
sick, twisted way. Yeah.
yeah.
I think at the end of the day, she's not on the level of Palpatine, but she's like Palpatine, where she's going to play whichever card's going to get her the most power. And I think part of being in love with Marcion is she thinks that he is going to provide her with that power and with that status. And um, in phase 3, we start to see the consequences of that belief,
Mm,
which is pretty cool. Uh,
awesome.
so
I have to
yeah.
catch up.
I mean, it's really cool to see, because phase 2 goes back in time, and then phase 3
Yes, yeah.
comes back, and it's really cool just to see all of this stuff that we're talking about now is very intentional. Even like things in this book that were like, we didn't get enough of that. I'm thinking of like, oh, in Defy the Storm, they developed that even more. So it's all been well planned out, and there's no string that has a loose end to it,
Right, right.
in my opinion.
So yeah, so they go onto Xylan's ship and they do this whole mission. The mission never really gets started. He's like, we're gonna go to my like family's planet. We're gonna change ships because I want to take a different ship. And while that's happening, of course, this is all ploy. This is when Chancey Yarrow and the rest of the Nile start attacking. And you know what? I will say my jaw dropped at first when they mentioned like Imri going down and Wreath going down, and like
Yeah.
I was like, oh my god, did they really just kill them like that? No, thank God. But also, why were they using stun? I don't know. But they
These are the good side of the Nile.
yes, yeah, true. But we get we do get to see Nan again, right? Because Nan is kind of get teamed up with Chancey Yarrow, and we follow that thread in Fallen Star where those two
Hmm.
are going to get captured and all that kind of stuff. But I guess this was interesting because we kind of got more background on Nan and how she is really full Nile. She like
Oh
also
yeah,
is
she's a
so
cultist.
dedicated to Markion, and I didn't get that as much in Into the Dark because we didn't really get as many like point of view chapters
Yeah.
from her. Um, so that kind of shocked me. Also, I hate her name. Nan just always makes me think of like an 80-year-old woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anytime they're like Nan, I'm like, yeah, like you're talking to your grandmother. I don't know.
Yeah, not okay. Maybe there was one loose thread they didn't tie up, which was making sure we had a good name for this character. But yeah, I mean, she's worked herself into a position of, while not authority, trust in from Marcion, because he
She
sends.
rats everyone's out. She pretty much rats everyone out.
Yeah, yeah, she's the tattletale in the classroom. But he lets her go away with Mari Santeca, as
Yeah.
Chansey is conducting more experiments, and Nan is the one that's supposed to go and protect. And of course, she fails at that. And earlier in the book, she witnessed Marchion killing a Tempest Runner, of which she is not.
Yeah.
So she's like, well, if he's willing to kill a Tempest Runner, he's definitely willing to kill me.
Yeah, she has
And,
this whole part where she's like, I'm pretty much dead.
yeah.
Right? Like, that kind of continues in Fallen Star. Her conversations with Chansey Yarrow and her are all about, like, hey, the Nihil don't really care about us, right? Like, Chansey Yarrow is really pushing that. Shows that she's not really involved in the Nihil all that much, right? She was doing it for her research, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, hey, like, we can get another way out of this. There's other stuff we can do, because and Nan is usually pushing back on this, saying like, no, because Marchion will kill us. She's like, he's probably gonna kill you anyway. Like, he's never
Yeah.
gonna trust you again. You got captured. Like, and then plus when you add in this book stuff with, yeah, and like you said, Santeca's dead, Mari Santeca, which is interesting. They mentioned her in, I guess, Light of the Jedi, right? And
Right.
Rising Storm a bit, that she was the one that's generating the paths through the Force. And it comes up, I didn't expect her to play a big role in this book. She did, because she's actually going to be the one that's calling to Vernestra.
Yep.
And she's going to give Vernestra like the coordinates to a path, type thing that she needs to take. She needs to take back. So do you think, does Vernestra have any more Force visions after this in hyperspace, or was that all Mari Santeca trying to reach her?
I plead the fifth.
Okay. All right. That's all I need to know. If it either gets addressed or yes, I'm good. But yeah, so a few of the characters that get stunned get captured, and we get Reath and Nan meeting up again, and they're kind of having this conversation a bit. But yeah, then I don't know. The book kind of unravels a bit at the end for me, where there's a lot of stuff at the end of this book when they're rescuing them that happens really, really fast.
Yeah.
And at the end, like, the characters end up pretty much like Vernestra has the court, like, that has the path from Mari Santeca. She still hasn't told Stellan this. She still hasn't told Stellan about her lightsaber. She's pretty much like, I'm holding on to all of this information. And she tells Emery, like, we're not telling anybody this. The Graphs kind of get like a slap on the wrist type of thing with the Graphs. We get but Xylan did fulfill his duty to Silvestri. He signs over the ship named the Vengeful Goddess as part of their contract, and so she does get a ship that way. So it's a little bit of happiness at the end of this, but kind of left me feeling a little unfulfilled. So I'm very happy to hear Defy the Storm kind of picks up on a lot of these threads.
Yeah, like pretty much all of these threads. And even like I read, Out of the Shadows a long time ago, and kind of felt like, and Justina Ireland is one of my favorite Star Wars authors.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably her biggest fan when it comes to pushing for her to get more stuff. And this did kind of leave not a bad taste in my mouth, but a weird taste in my mouth of like, okay, like a lot of things happened, but what really happened? Was this whole book just to get Vernestra this path that's obviously going to play some important role in the future?
Right.
And I sit here now not knowing what that is yet. So I'm still surmising that it's going to have some important role in the future. Yeah. And so it's like, was this whole book for that? And it turns out it wasn't. It turns out it just, I think we kind of expected the High Republic story to happen in the adult novels and then everything else to be supplement. And it has not happened that way. I think that's a good thing. I think that they've done a good job of crossing characters over, and you have characters like Avar who you can read just the YA novels and you get enough of who she is to make it work, but you get more of it if you read the adult novels. And then you've got characters like Vernestra who spend most of their time in the middle grade in YA novels. So I think like that approach to it works, and it allows for you to tell this story across these three books. I know earlier I said, it was kind of 1 and 2 with in Out of the Shadows and then Defy the Storm. But really, if you think about it, it ends up being a trilogy with Test of Courage there as really the first book. So it's an interesting approach that they took of crossing over these different mediums in order to form kind of this unique trilogy of books. And this is if you look at it that way, this is the darker middle chapter where everything kind of unravels and
Yes.
falls apart. And then you get Defy the Storm, and obviously like Defy the Storm still in the first wave of phase 3, so it doesn't completely bring things to a conclusion, but it does continue on these threads. And it's kind of like if we just had Empire Strikes Back, and I'm not comparing Out of the Shadows to Empire Strikes Back, but just for the analogy, if we just had Empire Strikes Back and only Empire Strikes Back, it's unsatisfying. The payoff in Return of the Jedi is what makes us go back and say that Empire is a compelling story. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of loose threads left untied at the end of the movie there. And that doesn't make the movie itself badly produced. It doesn't make the movie itself badly written. It's just an incomplete story. And I think that's what we got with Out of the Shadows. It does everything that they intended for it to do, and it does it effectively when you look at it in the scope of the overarching story. And I think this book, more than pretty much any of the other ones I think that I've read, depends on the other stories around it, both in phase 1 and later in phase 3 of what we've gotten so far.
Interesting. Yeah, so I'm very excited to get through the next ones. So I mean, what I still haven't read, by the way, is Race to Crash Point Tower, Mission to Disaster. That's Vernestra too, right? She's on the cover. Or
Mission
she like
to
barely in it.
Disasters. Yeah, no,
Okay.
she's in Mission to Disaster. And then Crash Point Tower is
Ram, right?
Ram. Yeah.
I'm having a tough time getting through that one. It's the
Daniel
audio
Jose-
book though. It's a different voice that I'm used to, and they're annoying me a bit, unfortunately. But
Daniel Jose Older is not my favorite author. His style just is not what I look for.
right.
But I will say that the Race to Crash Point Tower was the first one of his books that I actually enjoyed. And I don't say that as a knock on him. I always say like I don't like his stuff, and I think he's the most important author we have in Star Wars right now because I don't like his stuff. Because that means we're taking risks and we're going in new directions, and not everything is for me, and that's okay. So take my opinion of his stories with a grain of salt, but that was the first one I closed it, and I was like, I actually enjoyed a book by him. So definitely worth getting through. It's not a life changer, but it's a good, solid story.
Yeah, I'm like halfway through the audiobook. Gotta get through that, and then I have to, I guess, talk about it on here. But Mission to Disaster, I'm going to, I guess, do next, and then I gotta do Midnight Horizon as well. I haven't read that one yet.
Yeah, that one was rough.
Is it?
Yeah.
Who can you tell me? Is it any of the characters we already know, or are they brand new characters?
To be honest with you, I've blocked so much out of out of my mind that I've got to go back and revisit it. I honestly don't remember.
I don't blame you. Well, I can research that myself. I'll just Google see because, like you said, we kind of thought coming in that maybe it'd be like, okay, a story going in the adult books, a story going in the middle grade, a story going in the young adults, but really they've been bouncing all over, which I think is fun at times, and I do think there's a little bit of an issue, I think, getting people into it in that regard.
Yeah, it kind of. I'm glad they're ending it because I don't want it to become a Legend situation where
Yeah, because
people get
phase 3 is it, right?
yeah, phase 3 is it as far as this
Main
publication
story.
thing goes. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um Acolyte obviously shows we're going to get High Republic stories. I'm sure. I mean, we've got things like Young Jedi Adventures, which I know is a
Yeah.
preschool show, but it just little things like that give clues that they're not done with the era. But Phase 3 will end it. And I think that'll be a good point where people who haven't had the chance to get in can go back in and read it and what I imagine will happen is book nerds, of which you and I are. So this is not
Yeah.
saying anything bad against them. Book nerds will go and make timelines, and here's the order you should read it in for chronological. Here's the order you should read it in for release order, because that's what we do as Star Wars fans. Because
Yeah.
everything has been so iterative. Personally, I'm really excited about the opportunity to go back and read everything in timeline order. I think once phase 3 ends, that's going to be kind of my next long-term endeavor is going from I'm trying to think. I think Convergence is the first in the timeline. I might be wrong on that. But going from,
I think you're right.
doing the prequels essentially with phase 2 and reading all the way until we get the last story. But I mean, the end is near. I got my digital preview copy of Temptation of the Force today.
Oh,
So
nice.
things are moving in the direction to the end of this story. And so but I mean, even you're a perfect example of people are finding this all the time. You're coming in to it, you know, late, and people like me who have been in it for a while want to continue talking about it. So I definitely don't think we're going to see the end of the High Republic anytime soon.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because you can just keep making stories in this era
Yeah,
afterwards. Also, I wanted to mention too, Staros, of course, Sana Staros, right, or Sana Staros is
in the comics.
in the comics as Han Solo's wife, or claimed to be Han Solo's wife. Um, so of course that's her ancestors that
Yeah.
are in the story. My first reaction when I heard that name was that, but after reading Fallen Star and then reading these other ones, it's like, whoa, okay,
It's quite the deviation.
yeah, yeah. They've gone from senator to very much not. Yeah, so I guess we can wrap it up with this. So overall, I think we've shared. I still did very much enjoy this one.
Yeah, very much.
It's just, if, like you said, it does kind of feel like you're in the middle part. So I was wondering if Midnight Horizon picks up from it, but it sounds like we have to wait until phase 3 to really get some more movement on some of these characters and stories. Um, yeah. So I think what I'm going to do is soon I'm going to read Mission to Disaster. I would love to have you back on for that to kind of
Yeah,
wrap up Vernestra's phase 1, I believe here.
that is definitely on my list. I need to revisit, so we can definitely make that happen.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll have to look to see how long the audiobook is. They vary so much. Like the middle
They
grade
do.
will be from like 3 hours, which is what Race to Crash Point Tower is, and then you have like 5 hours for Test of Courage. So I'm really
Yeah.
curious to see how long
I think Mission to
that might be.
Disaster is a shorter one,
Okay.
if I remember correctly.
Then yeah, I'll be able to knock that out on a few days on my walk, or drive to work or something. But yeah, thank you so much, Brand, for coming on. Why don't you plug again where people can find you or follow you on social media
Yeah.
or find your podcast?
Yeah, so Clashing Sabers, pretty much everywhere at Clashing Sabers. You can check out our website, clashingsabers.net. We've got some articles on there. We do some meta-analysis type things, and that's what we do over on our podcast. So if you find our show on any of your podcatchers at Clashing Sabers, we've got multiple shows on the feed, all there for you, kind of a little bit of everything for every kind of Star Wars fan. So all of that is in one stream. You just click that subscribe button one time and you get 5 different shows, which is really fun. And really the most important thing that we do, I mentioned this last time, I'll mention it again, is our Patreon. Not because it gives to us, but because we give to others in the form of putting Star Wars books into classrooms across the country. And so we've been able to make a difference in some classrooms because of that, because of our patrons, which has been a really, really cool thing. 100% of the money raised goes directly to buying and shipping said books to teachers. And those books get to travel with the teacher. A lot of times books get donated to the school, which is awesome. And then teachers are having to pay for their own classroom libraries, and it becomes expensive to get high interest books. So we're trying to take some of that burden off of these educators and make sure, especially in this era of insane book bans, that kids can have their hands on stories that they want, and stories that they deserve, and stories that inspired us. And we're trying to just share that. So if that sounds like something you would like to do, patreon.com/clashing sabers, or even better, you can go over to our website, like I said, and click on nominate a teacher and send us a teacher that we can send books to. Because nothing feels better than getting to go in and spend a few $100s at half price books to buy out their Star Wars stock, and somebody go, "You're a Star Wars fan?" And I'm like, "Let me tell you about something pretty cool that these people are doing for us." So if you know a teacher, if you are a teacher, if, like I always say, if you can look up a teacher in the phone book, let us know. ClashingSabers.net is the place to do that.
All right, great. Yeah, everybody go do that. That sounds wonderful. Yeah, just very, very lucky that you're able to have the fan base to be able to provide for teachers. That's amazing.
It's been a really cool experience. It was something that was not something we set out to do, but has kind of become the core of who we are as a organization. And again, like we do the legwork, but really it's our patrons being willing to give $1, $3, $5, and when we do our fundraisers, sometimes hundreds of dollars at a time to those who are able to be able to make a difference in the lives of these kids. And we've gotten some amazing. Amanda, one of the people on our network now, is actually, we met her because she was a teacher that got nominated.
Wow.
And yeah, so it's been a pretty life-changing experience for a lot of people, and we're really lucky to be able to do it.
All right. Well, thanks again for coming on and talking out of the shadows.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to follow our podcast here, it's at podawakens on all of our social medias, podawakens@gmail.com. If you want to send more long form feedback, you can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or you can like and subscribe to us here on the YouTube channel as we continue to try to grow that channel. Thank you all for watching and listening along. We'll catch you next time when we talk the next adventure in our High Republic Road to the Acolyte series.